Hi YouTube, Regina here. So yesterday I did a part 2 of Great Depression era parents, lessons learned growing up in a large and thrifty household. And I thought I would just do and add on to that in part 3. Also, I was in such a rush yesterday that I didn't elaborate on some of the stories that I could have added. So part 3, and just first is Matt and I are in the park, and we're in a park in Brooklyn, and we're just going to be walking around the park. And maybe in the background, you'll see a little bit of views of Manhattan. I'll point them out as we get to them. And so, first, or this might be like lesson number 25 or something like that. I think I'm up to like 25. But my grandma used to come and visit us and stay with us about once a year, once every other year. And she would always come with the gift of cash. And we would stand in a line and greet my grandma, and for each one of us, she would give us $1 or $2 or a couple of dollars, and sometimes even 5 or 10, depending on how often it was that she saw us. And my mom would stand at the very end, and the moment we got the money, we would have to walk past my grandma and give it to my mom. And my mom would take that money and she would buy bonds. And so I learned, and I always felt like this was really pretty awesome and cool, that we were saving. And so I learned early on that saving was possible, and that when you got nice gifts, you weren't supposed to spend them. You were supposed to save them. And I never did get to see that money, but I knew my mom would talk to us about the bonds that she had. And once we came of age, those bonds were due for us, and she would use them in a gift for us. So that was lesson number 1. Lesson number 2. I grew up in a somewhat large house. It was 4 bedrooms and 1.5 bathrooms. And my dad ended up buying land from the neighbor, so we had a really big backyard. And I mentioned this yesterday. But we shared rooms. Siblings shared rooms. So I shared a room with 4 of my other sisters, and my other sister shared a room, just hills behind me. My other sister shared a room with three of my sisters, and then my baby sister, she ended up sharing a room with the other 3 girls. And then, of course, my 3 brothers had a room by themselves. So, kids screaming in the park, going down the sled. In today's age, a lot of kids have their own rooms, and you don't need your own room. Even my husband grew up, and he just has a sister in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. And he didn't share a room with his sister. He shared a room with his sister until he moved out at a young age. And there was a big difference between their age, so it was kind of okay. But you don't need your own room. The next thing we learned was schedules. And so we were on shower schedules. Like, we didn't actually wash our hair every day, and learned that that was okay. We instead showered regularly and had a bath once a week. And other than that, if it was the summertime, we were in pools, we were running through sprinklers. But washing our hair every day was not something we did. It was only till I got older that I started to do that. Most of my siblings do not wash their hair every day. I am allergic to a lot of things, so I tend to still wash my hair more so regularly, only because that I do tend to feel itchy sometimes, and it makes me feel better. So, but in general, you don't need all those products. I still to this day do not use anything in my hair. No products, just shampoo and conditioner. No fancy gels or any products of whatsoever. So someone once asked me, I think in comments, what I use for my hair. Nothing. I use nothing. My hair has always been kind of pinched straight, and the only products I use is I still use the conditioners and shampoos I used as a kid. Some of them. Occasionally I'll go back to them. Like it's Mane for hair, and then I also use Milbon products. So when my hair starts to feel dry in the winter and stuff like that, I do like Milbon products. To the park. So you don't need all this fancy stuff. And when it came to makeup and all those kind of things, we really were not allowed to use makeup. My dad, if he saw us with makeup, he would get very upset. I think it was just his old generation that makeup wasn't really used. You could hear the noise from the highway. And city views are coming in the background. So I'll just stand here and walk this way. But he, so I didn't use anything. And to this day, I'm still not big on makeup. I wear a little foundation, a touch of lipstick, and some, occasionally I have eyeshadow I'll put on, but it's just a little mascara. But mostly foundation and just a touch of lipstick and a touch of mascara. That's it. So that's all I tend to do. And this came from growing up, and it just wasn't seen like something that you needed, and actually something that we shouldn't be doing. The next thing my parents taught us was to use our feet. And this one carried through to me. I walked everywhere. If you missed the bus, you had to walk to school. There was no driving you to school. And school was far away. So my elementary school I used to walk to every day. And but when I went to high school, it was pretty far away. And I would have to, if I missed the early bus, then I would have to walk. And we would walk to a lot of things. If we needed to go get something, even if we had some of our own candy selling money and we wanted to go pick up something with our own money, we would have to walk. Bikes were only for around the neighborhood. They weren't for going really far away. We were not allowed to go on the mopeds or anything without my dad. And so it was walking. And so we learned to walk everywhere. And to this day, I still do a lot of walking. I probably walk more than most people. And I even knew that I could do these long distances. And so when I moved out, I didn't actually have a car. So more on that shortly. The next lesson I learned is, I mentioned yesterday that my dad would ask for what he wanted, and you didn't get what you didn't ask for. So I learned this pretty early on. And so if I wanted to be in chorus, I went and asked to be in chorus. If I wanted to do something, when I went to high school, I didn't. I was very uncomfortable. I'm an introvert. So mostly an introvert, more so than I'm on the cusp. And I was very uncomfortable with the cafeteria. It was actually in a room. I went back to my high school recently, and it was actually in a different spot than it was when I was growing up. But I didn't want to be in this big cafeteria with all these people I didn't know, and then having to scrounge to find a seat. So I asked if I could take classes, and I never had a lunch all throughout high school. And that gave me the courage and the confidence to ask for something bigger. And as I started getting older, my dad was very, very strict. I grew up in a very strict household. My siblings were starting to move out, and I wanted to grow up too. I so wanted to be an adult. And I was already working. I was working. The moment I turned 15, I had a job. I was giving 3/4 of my paycheck. I made $3.35 an hour. And my mom got $120 a week from me. And I think my first apartment, so that was $480 a month. And I got to live on $40. I had to supply my own school clothes at that point, everything I needed. And so I took that lesson that I learned from my dad, and I went into the principal's office, and I asked to graduate in the 11th grade. I made a case for myself. I had a lot of courses. I was taking classes, and the only thing I really needed to miss was gym in the 12th grade. And they let me graduate in the 11th grade. And I even convinced my best friend to make a case for herself, and she did it too. And then my sister, I was going into her grade, she didn't like the idea I was going into her grade. And so she ended up graduating 6 months early. And so if you don't ask for what you want, you don't get it. And so from that point, I went directly on to college. So I was young. And I went home for one winter break. And then after that, even without a license, I moved out. I first moved in with my brother, and I lived in an apartment that off of one of his friend's house. And my bedroom was still connected to their house. They never put up the sheetrock wall, so I had a very discounted first apartment, and I would walk to work. At this point, I took a semester break off of school. I was probably 17, 18. And I walked to work. I took the bus. My brother would pick me up sometimes, but I moved out without a license. And in Long Island, it's much more suburbia. It's really pretty hard, and the bus system isn't the same as it is here. But because I learned that lesson of walking, then we were able to do it. And that brings me to the next lesson I learned. I do have a license now, but my parents taught me to continue to try even when you fail. There was no, okay, that's it, give up now. There wasn't any of that when I grew up. And so if you've never met anyone who's failed the road test 4 times, now you have. Every single time I took the road test, I did something different. And while my parents took the kids out for road test, and I did take driver's ed in school, but it was more like a simulation that you did in a classroom when I was learning. I didn't actually get my license till I was 19, because both my parents were at that time exhausted with road test. and with giving lessons. And so it was on me, and I got my friends to help me, and I drove their cars and with my permit. And so I really did get a lot of driving in, and I was able to then finally pass my road test. Every single time I did something wrong, like one time I came to a T road, I didn't make a complete stop. Another time I didn't make a proper 3-point turn. So I was always did something that made them fail me. And even though I did really know how to drive. But the lesson of continue to go for what you want and work hard, and eventually you will. And so I finally got my road test when I was 19, and that completely changed my life because it opened up the world to me. And I still love driving to this day, even though I did give up my car eventually when we were trying to save money. But anyway, those are some of the lessons I learned. The fact that I knew I could walk everywhere gave me realized that I could do things. The fact that they made us do everything ourselves and be responsible for ourselves, it made me, I did my own student loans. I filled out my own paperwork for everything I ever needed, because they taught us, whether it was knowingly or unknowingly, how to be responsible adults. And so, been working since I was 15, been hustling and paying my way. It took me many years to finish college, but eventually I did, even though I had an early start and I was finished with school early, because I was paying my own way, because I didn't give up, and I would work and come up with the money, work full time, go to school. I would put a bunch of my classes together, so I only had to go in 2 days a week. And eventually I graduated from a university, and I transferred like community college to university. And then I took that at the time and eventually got a corporate job, which I finally got when I was in my late 20s, and then moved out on my own in my 30s because I was ready to become completely independent. And then I met my husband. So those are some of the additional lessons I learned from growing up with Great Depression era parents who were extremely thrifty and responsible. They taught us to be responsible and knowingly or unknowingly how to manage money. To this day, when like my niece and nephews are coming today, so we're heading back to the house. We're heading home right now to go spend the day with them. And when it comes to gift giving, I still remember feelings of my grandma. I love giving to the kids' future. And so those kind of things to me mean something. And you'll probably even see it in my budget. I help out where I can because I still remember my grandma giving us money and me knowing that that was going towards bonds. Anyway, this is Regina from Simply Fundamental. Hope you're having a lovely day, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.